All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Eagles Power Hour. I'm your host, as always, Kylor Neal. Plus, we got the other co-host back with us. He had a couple busy weeks, but Rusty is back, which means you don't have to just listen and look at my annoying face. We got another guy who knows sports, and he's going to be able to talk quite a bit of things. But before we dive into some of our topics today, Rusty, man, how have you been? Where have you been the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I've been made a little trip over to Indiana, not for the tournament. I was a week early. If I just stayed one more week, my wife would have killed me, one. Yeah. And two, I would have been there for the tournament, March Madness that's going on. But yeah, man, so I went over there for my job, just as far as like extra training and whatnot, and it was good. So yeah, it was a success. One thing, I don't know if you've been to Indiana, man. My first thing I noticed, well, a couple things I noticed. I feel like there are a lot of people drove Dodge Chargers and Challengers. I saw them all over the place, and how flat it is over there.
Yeah,
like, I mean, come from the Pacific Northwest and going to like Indiana, man, it was completely flat everywhere. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to Houston. So Houston is the exact same way. You know, I went from the Pacific Northwest, Western Washington, then Spokane, then even down to Arizona. That's sure you're living in a valley in the Phoenix Valley, but there's mountains all around you. And then I go to Houston. The tallest hill or the tallest mountain is a freeway overpass. That is the only thing in Houston. It is flat. You need to go about 50 miles north, 50 miles, west. And then there's some rolling hills, which they call the high country or the high country, I think, whatever it is. But yeah, it's nothing. It is all flat pretty much once you get past the Rockies.
See, I like myself some mountains. I like myself some scenery. Like to me, like in the summertime, it is hard to beat Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Like this area is just the amount of lakes. I mean, there's just so much stuff to do. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful over here. And this was my first time traveling during the whole COVID deal going on. So that was interesting. Wearing a mask on my face for, I mean, pretty much the entire day. So I mean, that was pretty interesting. Actually, I do have a story. So
let's hear it.
So we landed at like 11 p.m. right, and so like I didn't eat pretty much anything on the airplane, so I was starving. And as soon as we landed, we're like, all right, let's find somewhere to eat, and we'll check into our hotel. There was like nothing open. The only thing that was open was White Castle. I'm like, oh, sweet, White Castle. I mean, I saw the movie, right? It makes sense. Like, let's have some White Castle. Let's have some little ciders. I'm excited. It's going to be good. And so we went up there. We ordered. There's 4 of us. We're like, let's get 20 sliders. I mean, we're all just going to crush them, right? And so we paid, and then she handed us the food in our little minivan that we had rented, and that was a smart decision. And, dude, it smelled like straight dog food. As soon as that went into our vehicle, we're like, oh, my Lord. It was so disappointing. I mean, it was so disappointing. I mean, I had to eat at least 6 of them. I had 6 because I was hungry. Right. I'm a grown boy, so it was terrible.
So normally, like when you go in the frozen food section of a grocery store, and let's say you even like get the P.F. Chang's stuff, it doesn't compare with actual P.F. Chang's. Like there's a huge difference. When you go to the frozen aisle and you get White Castle burgers, put them in the oven, it's the exact same thing. There's no difference. White Castle, super overrated, but it's all that movie. We were all pretty hyped that first time I saw White Castle, and they're nothing impressive.
It wasn't. You know, the one food item that I had that stuck out in my mind. Have you ever had a Bobby? Have you ever had a sandwich called a Bobby? I'm sure you have. And so it's basically like a French roll. You take like turkey stuffing and cranberry sauce with some mayo. Oh my goodness, man. That was so delicious. That was so good.
Right after like Thanksgiving, I think it's Paradise Bakery. They always have a good Bobby. I forgot what it was called, but yeah, I guess it's a Bobby, but it is the best thing ever. It is delicious.
It is stupid. I got 2, one for then and then one for my hotel room later that day. It was delicious.
Yeah, well, what I've been doing, so right on the smoker today, I have a brisket that's been smoking for like 8 hours. Right after this podcast, it should be done. I think I timed it perfectly. So I'm kind of excited because I got a Traeger just a few days ago or so. And, I've been making tons of different things on it the last few days. Already out of pellets, need to go get more. But, man, this thing's good. Smoked salmon. I made pork tenderloin the other day. Everything's been so good. So I'm testing the brisket. We're going to see if I mess up and never make it again, or if it's good enough that I'll keep doing it.
See, like I've been See, the whole food talk, I could go on for like hours talking about food. Like, so when I was over in Indiana for my training, and so we had to eat a lot of calories because we're just, crushing, we're burning calories all day because it's physical stuff from sunrise to sunset. So after my training, I would get home or back to the hotel around 11. And so we'd stop at a burger place. I would get a double cheeseburger with bacon, which was 700 calories. I would get a double patty melt or a sourdough like patty melt, which was 800 calories. And then we'd stop and get this shake place. It was Smoothie King, and get a 1,700 calorie shake. That was my dinner for 5 days. Jeez. And I lost like 10 pounds, bro. It was
I bet.
ridiculous.
I bet, especially because you're wearing all that gear. It's hot. I mean, you're in a constant sauna. Plus, you're working out. You're burning calories. Yeah, I mean, that's impressive, man. Well, it is good to have you back, though. I'm glad you had a good time, but I was tired of talking to myself for a few episodes.
I couldn't listen. That's one thing. If you're a listener, like, you'll never see me on here by myself. I can't do it. I can't.
Well, don't worry. I don't think many people. I don't think many people watch, so it's totally fine. I went on a rant, and I tend to forget what I'm talking about because Rusty, you know how I prep for episodes. I don't do any prep. It's like I have 4 words, 4 things I possibly may want to cover, and then whatever comes out of my mouth. Good luck. So when you're ranting by yourself for 30 to 45 minutes, I mean, good luck. You just got to sit through it. And any of you guys who actually sat through my solo episodes with all the ranting, I applaud you all. But guess what? We got better episodes now because Rusty's back in it. So Rusty, I already kind of talked about this a few times solo, but I want to get your take because this was obviously some big news. But I want to hear Rusty's take on the whole Shantay move because I actually got in a debate with like two of my best friends about this move. And, they said this was horrible. This is definitely a parallel move. This makes no sense. And, I had to defend myself for a good hour and a half. And at the very end of it, we just kind of said, we're going to have to agree to disagree. So I want to kind of hear your thoughts on this move. Is it a good move? And where does it leave Shantay in the future? Where does it leave Eastern Washington in the future? What's your thoughts?
Well, first off, it is a blow. Shantay Legans, man, he's an amazing person and he's an amazing coach. I'll tell you this. I remember one time I sent him a text. I can't remember what I sent him, but he immediately called me and then I had talked to him on the phone for like 15 minutes. And he's one of those really genuine guys that you talk to. And he's never blown us off or done anything like that. If we asked him a question, he always answered a question. He was an amazing individual to work with.
That was my favorite thing because who during March Madness spends time out of their day to hop on a podcast? Shantay Legans. I don't know anyone else who would, just days away from playing the biggest game and coaching the biggest game of their life. He's like, yeah, man, just give me a time. I'll make sure I'm on. Shantay, great dude. Yeah,
I said in the beginning of the year, I thought this season you're going to see really the good coaches separate themselves, right? You're going to have the great coaches, the good coaches, and everyone else, right? And that was it this season. The amount of obstacles Shantay Legans and company, the other assistant coaches and the team that had to overcome. They went a month without playing a game. They went 1 week without practicing, and they had to play a game, and they got better as the season went on. That was no surprise. This is kind of the trend for the Eagles the past couple of years. And what they did throughout the season and then going through the Big Sky tournament and then March Madness, it speaks for itself, man. He was 75-49 overall record. He's an outstanding, he had the outstanding resume here at Eastern Washington. It is a big loss, but to me, I'm nothing but happy for Shantay Legans and his family for the move. And here's the thing is people looking at it like, well, is it really a step up? We're only looking at from a fan's perspective, right? We don't know everything that's going on behind the doors, behind the scenes. I know the pay is definitely more. He's definitely getting more pay or whatnot. And to me, it makes sense. I see it as a move up. I do. I honestly do.
Well, yeah. So even just excluding the pay, because of course, anytime you're making more money and drastic amount of more money, that is always a promotion, no matter how you look at it. Yeah. But I just look at it from a conference standpoint. Arguably, the WCC outside of the Powers and the Big East is probably the best basketball conference outside of those ones. In the RPI, it kind of shows that. Now, of course, Gonzaga has a huge advantage. But when everyone talks about, oh, this is a parallel move, just because Eastern Washington was 100% better than Portland, I don't think anyone can even debate that. If you put Portland last year versus Eastern last year or this season, Eastern smokes them probably by 20 points. But if you're looking at it in the grand scheme of things, the WCC is potentially a 2 to 3 bid conference. There's only 3 teams in the Big Sky that was ranked above the bottom 3 in the WCC. So overall, that conference is a huge jump. And sure, this is going to be a tough program to try and turn around. The culture's not there. They do not have a history of success. Eastern Washington has a better history of success in Portland. But if Shantay can somehow turn that program around, maybe be competitive, not with the Gonzagas of the world, because you're just not gonna. Look at their recruiting class. They just signed the number 6 overall in high school, and they're about to sign the number 1 overall in high school. You're not beating Gonzaga, but those games against Gonzaga are going to give you tons of exposure. And if you're competitive, well, guess what? That's going to be promising. And if you can be competitive within a few years with the BYUs of the world, with the St. Mary's of the world, every single job probably is going to open up for you outside of some of the crazy blue bloods, but you're going to have huge opportunities if you can turn that around. High risk, high reward. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, just look at what Coach Legs built here at Eastern Washington, not just with, the current players, but the guys they have, coming in. I mean, we had, 2 seniors this year, and how competitive we were throughout the season. I mean, what he built here, the program that he built, also we're going to talk about that here in a minute, but it's phenomenal. I'm a huge believer in betting on yourself. I mean, his legacy, his, past actions show that he's a hell of a coach, a hell of a recruiter, right? And there's no doubt in my mind that, him going to Portland, listen, if I was going to bet on him being successful at Portland or not, I'm betting the house on him being successful. And what does that look like? I'm not sure, but no doubt in my mind that he's going to do some work over at Portland.
Yeah, I think so. And again, if he can get Portland from being a dumpster fire to being a top 4 or 5 team in the WCC, that's a huge advantage. That shows a lot of promise. Then after a couple more years, a couple more recruiting classes, if you can start overthrowing the St. Mary's of the world, maybe start being competitive with the BYUs. The sky's the limit. It's just you have Mark Few in there. So you're always going to play second fiddle to basically Gonzaga just because of they are not a WCC team in the grand scheme of things. They are right up there now with the North Carolinas of the world in terms of national pedigree. So, the cool thing is he's going to get a lot of exposure. He's going to get to, play that Gonzaga team 2-3 times a year, which means his teams are going to get a lot of exposure. So, yeah, I do think it is not a parallel move or a step down. I think it's a high risk, high reward. But, yeah, like you said, if you're betting on a guy, bet on the guy who's willing to risk it and bet on the guy who has a successful track record. I would bet on Shantay.
Yeah, 100%. You could already see it right now. If you look at offers that he's submitting to people, they just sent an offer to Dylan Groves, right? Jacob and Tanner's younger brother, who was, I believe he committed to Eastern Washington, but I'll say he's a smart guy, man.
Yeah.
He's a grinder through and through. And that being said, with Coach David Riley, getting the promotion to head coach, that was no brainer. Honestly, that should have happened, right away. It happened pretty quickly, but to me, that's a no-brainer. I did see a comment on Twitter. You see a lot of comments on Twitter, but
and sometimes I get too involved in those comments on Twitter.
Yeah,
I go to battle.
I'll let you do that. I did see one comment on Twitter because we did have some transfer news that we could talk about here if you'd like, but. With Coach Legs leaving and some, individuals put their names in the transfer portal. Someone said, well, that's got to be a bad look on the, for Coach Riley. I'm like, no, absolutely not. He's a high IQ coach. He's a great individual. Coach Legans surrounded himself with like-minded individuals with TJ, with Bobby, and then Coach Riley. All those dudes are absolutely solid. So Coach Riley definitely has an uphill battle. And I know his number one priority right now is to recommit the Groves brothers without a doubt.
Yeah, so let's get a little bit of a take on Riley as a head coach, and then we will talk about, the Groves brothers. You've already mentioned Coach Riley a lot. This was kind of the expected hire. This was one of those things you and I talked, privately. We were texting. This was kind of the news we were waiting for. We just were wondering when Eastern Washington was going to announce it. Like you said, Shantay surrounded himself with like-minded individuals. David Riley, I think he's got a bright mind. I think he has a bright future at Eastern Washington. But what is your take on David Riley in terms of, because we did have such a successful team. We did have such a young team. Now, let's not talk about the transfers yet because that can definitely change the whole landscape of Eastern Washington in the next few years. But what does David Riley have to do to continue the success right off the bat? Do you think we are going to have, a drop off in terms of maybe not all the way down at the bottom, but is it going to be potentially a rebuilding year? Is the offensive, system going to change, the design of the game, the speed of the game? Or do you think we're just going to pretty much stay steady, stay the course, and be the same Eastern Washington that we've seen the last few years?
So just like last year when Mason Peatling left, right? Everybody had this knee-jerk reaction, like who's going to fill the role? And I did from day one, said, from the summer, Tanner Groves is going to get some big-time minutes. I think he's going to really perform. And I was the only one saying it. I said it multiple times throughout the summer, and we still got some dudes on the roster, right? Tanner Groves, Jacob Groves, Michael Meadows. they're filling huge minutes through the season. Like, there's dudes that they have to compete with day in and day out on the bench that will get a lot more minutes this coming season, pending what happens with the guys that are in the transfer portal right now. And there's a lot of dudes in that roster that I think are going to have successful careers here at Eastern Washington. And what happens next season, it's really hard to tell with the names that are currently in the transfer portal with that happening. And we'll see who recommits, if any recommit. But I don't know, man. It's really hard to say. I think it's going to be really difficult to have the season that we just had. That's just the reality of it. And that's just, a fact, right? So,
yeah. Okay. So this was kind of breaking news, and it was one of those things where, I wasn't overly surprised. I think even texted you, and this was something that you were surprised on because, with the whole transfer portal that's going on now, it's definitely giving players an opportunity to leave their first college, go to another college. But when you have the success that you have had, when you start trending on Twitter, when you're being compared to Abraham Lincoln and Napoleon Dynamite, you have a name on you. So what's kind of your thought process on the Groves brothers potentially transferring? Because they did also say they're not ruling out Eastern Washington, but it's pretty safe to assume, at least in my opinion, they're going to be going on. I'm sure they're going to get offers from Portland, from Shantay. I'm sure Shantay's trying to get them. I'm sure there's also going to be quite a bit of other schools who saw how successful they were in the Big Sky tournament, who saw how successful they were versus Kansas. Those two players alone dominated Kansas by themselves. I think the sky's the limit on what type of opportunities come, but I do think Shantay is definitely, trying to grab them and bring them to Portland to make Portland 100% already better, and more competitive in the WCC. But what are your overall thoughts with these Grove brothers transferring? Because I think you and I think the same thing, as we love these dudes. We wish them the best, whatever decision they make, no ill will if they decide to transfer, if they decide to stay. But yeah, what's your thoughts, man?
Yeah, so this, free transfer, right? That really throws things for a loop. With that being said, I'm going to really tread carefully with my words because I don't ever want to, hey, this is what this young man should do. It's his life, his decision at the end of the day, and I want him to do what's best for him. But with that being said, dude, just like Coach Legs, right? His stock was at an all-time high, right? And he made the move that was best for him, for his family. I don't blame him at all. And the same thing goes with, Tanner and Jacob. I was surprised when they put in their names in the transfer portal. I'm not going to lie. That being said, I'm nothing but happy for them. So anytime that you're looking at, improving your position or even looking at like a different change of scenery for whatever reason, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Sometimes it is, right? So it's, I don't know, man. It's really tough because I could talk on both sides of it. And I messaged Tanner, I messaged Jacob. I said, hey, man, I'm nothing but happy for you. You guys who betted on yourselves since, day one, you guys put in all the work. So you can never hate on somebody who wants to put themselves in a more advantageous position. And that's what I think these guys are, that they're looking to possibly do. They're going to look at all their options, and maybe at the end of the day, their best position is right here in, Cheney, Washington. That's very possible. The coaching staff knows them. They know all the players. They have good chemistry with the players. There's no, there's no like going to a different team and trying to figure everything out. And I don't know. Their phones have got to be going off the chain right now of all these coaches trying to wine and dine you. I don't know, man. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation. I know Coach Riley right now, though. He is just hitting up their phones 100%.
And he don't worry, guys. He's keeping everything legal by the NCAA rule books. Don't worry. But yeah, I bet you the Groves phones are blowing up. They're a great duo. They're good kids. The good brothers overall. They were huge assets to our team. I mean, we wouldn't have been able to make the run we did without them. But I mean, hats off to them. If they find a different opportunity outside of Eastern Washington and they think it's the best opportunity that will fit their needs and will give them higher exposure or whatever. I mean, the thing is, this kind of reminds me, it's of course handled differently, but the Vernon Adams transfer to Oregon, of course, it's already handled differently. But I'm not going to fault someone for doing a decision that they think is going to better their lives. This is not one of those things where I think any Eastern fan should start, getting angry or like, why are all these players transferring, our good players and stuff like that? I mean, if there's an opportunity given to anyone, this is like us in our job careers. Rusty, if there was an opportunity given to you that you couldn't pass up, you would take it. Same with me. If there's an opportunity given to me, I would take it. The same thing happens with these athletes. And the cool thing is you got to at least remember the good times. You got to at least know the Groves brothers are going to be 100% happy with everything Eastern Washington has given them, even if they decide to leave. They're going to remember this moment. They're going to remember the tournament. And we just have to remember these good times. And, hopefully they stay. Hopefully they do. I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to be, heading out of Eastern, heading out of Cheney, especially if it's, a pretty big school that's maybe offering them. I mean, the rumor is Kansas. I don't think the Groves brothers are going to Kansas. But I mean, if they do, how sweet would that opportunity be? But yeah, I mean, it's their decision. It's their opportunity to handle. And I just wish them all the best. I mean, I have no ill will. I have only respect for these two, and I hope they kill it wherever they go.
Do you, if you had to guess, do you think any more names go in the transfer portal from Eastern?
I mean, just looking at the trend of all of the, I'm going to say mid-major, small major conferences, look what's happened all around the Big Sky. This whole transfer portal will always affect the smaller schools and the smaller conferences. If we had Shantay coming back next year, I don't think we maybe would have seen the same amount of transfers. And it's not to diminish David Riley. I think David Riley is going to be a very successful coach, and I have a lot of hope for him. But when you dominate, when you start playing well, and you're in one of these smaller teams, opportunities are going to arise. When opportunities arise, or you think you can get a newer opportunity from a bigger conference, a bigger school, maybe a school you grew up watching, you're going to transfer or at least try and test out the waters. I do think we will have a couple more transfers. Do I think some of them will put their name out and probably return because maybe they didn't get the offers they wanted? Absolutely. But I do think there's going to be a few more transfers. I just don't know who. And I hope I'm wrong. And I hope everyone sees, the grass is redder on our side and they want to stay there.
Whatever you do, just make sure it's the right situation for you to succeed.
Absolutely. And I think they're all, going to make some good decisions, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think this is a new era. All of the Big Sky, in terms of FCS football, in terms of our basketball program, the whole Big Sky in general, is going to be more like a AAA ball league. You are almost going to be a farm system for now these bigger schools because of how the transfer system operates. I do think this is not going to be, oh man, we got to transfer every few years or someone's transferring every 3-4 years. I think this is going to be an every year type of thing now. This is just the culture that's going to be happening around our program, which does suck because a lot of our great players, they're going to have other opportunities to leave. And I think we are all going to see that throughout the Big Sky for football, for basketball, for pretty much every single sport.
Yeah. I mean, so it's not only interesting for the current guys that we have that put their names in the transfer portal, but the guys that are committed, right? Kind of interested to see what the trickle down effect of that is as well. So,
yeah, the thing I'm expecting is, even though I believe in our team and I believe in our coach, I'm expecting a little bit of a rebuild year, just because you do have a lot of new places in place if, the transfer portal is going to operate how we think it is. So there's going to be a few new faces. We got a lot of talent still on the roster, so I don't think our rebuild is going to be where other teams' rebuilds are, where they drop all the way down to the bottom of the conference. I think maybe instead of being a top contender, top 2, maybe we drop somewhere in the middle of the pack, which guess what? Big Sky Conference in basketball, you do not need to be the number one team going into the tournament. All you need to do is be competitive, and I think David Riley can definitely make us competitive, and all you need to do is make a run in the Big Sky postseason, and guess what? We're back. We're back in March Madness. We're back getting exposure and all of that jazz. So that's all you need, and I think David Riley definitely has a mindset to do that.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, Helen. Also, shout out to Jacob Davison. Good luck to wherever you find yourself as well, because he also put his name in the transfer portal as well. So,
as a grad transfer. Yeah, I mean, hopefully these guys all get the opportunity they deserve, the opportunity they want, and get the playing time that they're hoping for. Again, no ill will towards any of these guys. We respect all of their decisions. We just love it if you stay, but guess what? It's not up to us. It's up to you guys, and we'll support you throughout your whole career. And we'll
100%. I mean,
unless you go to Montana, then you know what? Then if you go to Montana, Groves, you can screw off. No, I'm just joking.
But with that being said, though, like, what an interesting season, right? With the layout of the schedule, with all the obstacles that this team had to overcome, and the guy like Michael Meadows, Tyler Rupp, the Fridge, right? I mean, all these dudes who just like kind of, I don't want to say popped out of nowhere, but I mean, they did. I mean, they earned their minutes, they earned their time on the playing court, and all the different stories that happened throughout the season. And March Man against Kansas, dude, what an exciting game to see Eastern Washington trending on Twitter and stuff. I mean, that's awesome. I really wish that I thought of Abraham Lincoln when Tanner Groves was on our podcast. I just dropped the ball on that one, but that was good.
I mean, I got to ask you, which one, because there was memes everywhere.
There was.
Did you have like a favorite meme that popped up from the Groves brothers? Because, that's the one that stuck in my head. It's like, man, I didn't know Cheney Washington had Abraham Lincoln and Napoleon Dynamite on the same team, stuff like that. But I mean, the Groves brothers were blowing up. Do you have a favorite meme?
Dude, honestly, it was the Abraham Lincoln and Napoleon Dynamite. Just the thought of, James Groves as Napoleon. What was it? He smashes tater tots. What tater tots? Napoleon, give me some of your tater tots.
Yeah, I loved it. I definitely was laughing. So I have, let's see here. I'm pulling up one little thing. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about football, unless you have any other remarks about the basketball season, because basketball season's over. It's purely football now, right?
Yeah, it's purely football now. That being said, my only remark is, Coach Riley, let's get you on the podcast. Let's introduce you as the head coach. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We are always welcome to have them. But Eastern Washington football had a big game this weekend. It was, there was fans in the stands, not a lot. It was limited, but they're in phase 3, so they were able to have fans in the stands. We had a huge storyline, the return of Bo Baldwin, the historical Eastern Washington head coach who set records, kind of put Eastern Washington on the map. You can argue he's the top 2 coach in Big Sky history. Cal Poly's been suffering this season, but Bo Baldwin was heading back. Here's also the cool thing. It wasn't just Bo Baldwin. It was Bo Baldwin and company. Here is all the Eastern Washington former players or coaches that's on Bo Baldwin's coaching staff. You have the offensive coordinator, Nick Edwards. We all remember him tearing up the field when he played with us. Quarterback, Eric Meyer. We had Eric on the podcast a while ago, didn't we? I feel like no, it was Matt Nichols. That's right. It was the other quarterback. Jeez, we've had so many people. My bad, Matt Nichols. But we tried to get Eric. He just never replied. So you know what? We control him a little bit. Then we had, Paul Wolf. Remember, he was the coach before Bo Baldwin. Yep. Then you have J.C. Sherritt. I mean, he was a Buck Buchanan Award, one of the best defensive players in Eastern Washington history. All of these guys returned. And it was a true homecoming game for a lot of these guys, which made me a little nervous. When you looked at Cal Poly, they were playing not great to start the year. UC Davis beat them 70-something to 24.
73 to 24.
Yeah, it was brutal. So, what is that? 49 points off the top of my head. And then, Southern Utah, who is not that good of a team, they were able to pick Cal Poly apart. Eastern Washington on paper was going to destroy Cal Poly. But with all of those head coaches, all of the coaches from Eastern Washington, all the players from Eastern Washington on Cal Poly's coaching roster, I'm not going to lie and say I was not nervous. I was nervous because I thought they could bring some type of intensity to Eastern Washington. But guess what? Eastern Washington blew the brakes off Cal Poly. It was a very strong showing. What is your kind of thoughts on just the whole Bo Baldwin and company returning to Eastern Washington? Was it cool to see? What were your thoughts leading up to the game? Were you a little nervous like I was, or were you confident?
Well, no, I was a little bit nervous because this game was a little bit different, especially, leading up to it. I mean, the ties that Bo Baldwin has with, Eastern Washington, this isn't just a normal football game like against UC Davis, right? There is a little bit of special connection, and sometimes you just never know, man. Like there's been, games in the past where a previous coach plays against his old team and they just upset the team, right? So you just never know what's going to happen. But pretty early on in the game, I was no longer worried because Eastern Washington kind of did what they had to do as far as rolling Cal Poly.
Yeah, they jumped out to a 21-0 lead all in the first quarter. I mean, it was one of those things. The end of the first quarter was 28-7, and really Cal Poly only had one drive where it was successful. Other than that, Cal Poly didn't look like they can move the ball versus Eastern Washington at all, and we were moving the ball at ease. I mean, if you look at really what Eastern Washington did versus Cal Poly team, 688 total yards of offense. And I am not going to lie. After the second half, we pumped the brakes. It was not the same Eastern Washington team because we were already up, what was it, 44-45 to 7. It was already done at halftime. We slowed down the tempo of the game. We could have ran up the scoreboard. If we really wanted, this could have been a 100 to 10-point game. I mean, that's kind of what it was looking like. But we slowed it down. We let Cal Poly, I guess, not get blown out, even though they totally got blown out by 52 points. But Eastern Washington looked amazing on offense. The one thing that was kind of blown up on Twitter was Gunner came out the first play. He came out the first drive. Everyone was thinking, what is going on? Gunner is going to be the quarterback of the day. I mean, he looked phenomenal in that first drive too.
Really good
touchdown. Yeah. He was having no troubles. And I was like, okay, we're going to see Gunner play. I don't know if Eric's injured. He had a couple big hits the last few weeks, and maybe there's some injuries or something like that. But then Eric came back in after that first drive, and, he played until pretty much the fourth quarter. What do you take from that? Was it just maybe you don't think Eric Berrier was ready? Maybe he was cramping a little, or, we just had to give him some extra time. It was such a weird, I've never seen that, where you're sitting out your starter first drive, and after your backup plays phenomenal in that first drive, you're like, cool, the starter's coming back in and playing the rest of the game. It was super weird and interesting, which makes me just think maybe there's a cramp. Maybe there's something he wasn't mentally ready yet or something.
I don't think he was not mentally ready. I'm sure he was mentally ready, but
for sure.
I will say that I don't think it was planned. You know what I'm saying? I don't think the coach said, hey, Gunner, we're just to give you the first. I don't think that was planned because during that first drive, the camera showed Eric Berrier with it appeared to be like a personal trainer of some sort. And so I'm assuming maybe there was something they were addressing for that first drive. But it threw me for a loop. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Like what? I mean, Gunner played absolutely phenomenal that first drive. He did an awesome job. But I mean, when your starting quarterback is not in for the first drive of the game, there's bells and whistles going off. And so I don't think it was planned by any means. And so maybe he had like a little cramp or tweak something that they just wanted to look at a little bit more before they put him into the game.
Okay. I mean, let's just look at it this way. Gunner, of course, he only played, a limited time compared to Eric Berrier, and I don't want to take anything away from Eric Berrier, and I don't want to, say Gunner is our next best thing ever. But in this specific game, if you look at his stats, he outplayed Eric Berrier, which is insane. He had 6 for 9, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns, almost 15 yards per pass. That was impressive. He had 1 yard for 14 rushes, so he averaged 14 yards a carry. I mean, of course, it's a small sample size, but 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Gunner looked amazing when he was in the game, which, kind of excites me because there was a couple times last year Gunner would pop in and the offense wasn't clicking. Maybe this is at least a viewpoint of what's to expect if Eric Berrier decides to transfer before this fall, or if he graduates after this fall. We have a couple dogs on the team. We got Trey Turner, we got Gunner. it gives me a little more faith that maybe Gunnar can play up to the ability that he was in high school, because his high school tape and his high school stats were actually really phenomenal. He was a great quarterback. And, I don't think we really saw too much of that when he was able to come in, like for, let's say, Sac State last year. I mean, 5 drives, total of 30 yards of offense total. Right. We really struggled, but I mean, of course it is Cal Poly, and Cal Poly's defense is horrendous. But Gunnar looked good, and it makes me kind of confident for at least the future. If there is a couple drives where Eric Berrier has to sit, maybe there's a cramp or something like that, maybe I'm not as nervous Gunnar coming in, and he's doing what he's supposed to do. It seems like the team was clicking around him. He also made some key, third down plays, which was cool. It was fun to watch Gunnar play and play at an extremely high level.
Yeah, to me, what was cool to see a complete game by Eastern Washington. I mean, they had 400 yards in the air. They had over 267 yards on the ground, like rushing. I mean, that's just pure on the offensive side of the ball. That's just pure domination. It was really good to see. I mean, the amount of guys who touched the ball too, that was also fun to see.
Yeah, it totally was. It was a good time. I mean, I think 11, 12 wide receivers caught the ball. I mean, if you're looking at rushing, what was there? 8 different players ran. I mean, and all of them had positive yards too. It was cool to see. As a team, we had almost 8 yards of carry on the ground. I mean, it was a phenomenal performance overall by Eastern Washington. There's another interception by Eric Berrier, but I don't even think the interceptions are on Eric Berrier for most of these. Eric Berrier, he already has more interceptions than he did all of last year. But I think like 4 of them are not on Eric. Overall, though, man, we looked phenomenal. Now, I just don't want to just, say, hey, we are back. We're the best team. We can run the sky, because Cal Poly is not the team that's really going to give us a good gauge. But if you're beating a team like this and dominating a team like this, you are a pretty good roster. You have a lot of talent. You are a good team.
Well, I think too is just gaining momentum, right? Regardless if it's a Cal Poly that you're just blowing the brakes off of them, you're still getting momentum, going in the right direction. I think, especially going into a tough game like UC Davis, I think this is definitely going to help Eastern Washington. So, what kind of stuck out to you as far as, I mean, there's a lot of numbers, right? Just the amount of stats that Eastern Washington put up. I mean, what was the biggest takeaway from the game that you saw? Either on the offensive side of the ball or defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, so I was actually really impressed with our defense. I mean, if you've seen how Eastern Washington's played in some of the games this year, versus Idaho State, the whole field, the middle of the field was open. It seemed like at will. Whenever Idaho State needed to convert or do anything, there was a giant opening in the middle of the field where they just threw it 10 yards, first down. It was nice to see kind of the holes close. It was nice seeing the defensive line, which, again, every single week, the defensive line has kind of been the best position group really on the team. I mean, I think we sacked Cal Poly, 9-10 times? We were aggressive with every single one of their quarterbacks. And like versus Idaho, we were shutting down the run. We've shut the run really all year round. I think our defensive line, I'm super impressed. And this is one of the areas we had the most question marks around this Eastern Washington team in the preseason. There's no question marks. I think we have one of the best defensive lines in the Big Skies, possibly in the FCS. We look very good on our defensive line, and it was nice seeing our, defensive backs play to the ability we think they should be, because they are very talented. They're aggressive sometimes a little overly aggressive, where they're making a little bit of mistakes, but all around, I can't think of any portion where Eastern Washington looked bad. And I can't think of any portion where I'm like, all right, we need to focus on a couple more things. We need to fix this. Overall, top to bottom, every single position, we look good. And I hope it can continue because, like you said, momentum's big, and we got a big game coming up. But, yeah, what's your thoughts?
So I kind of want to ask you 2 more questions, kind of going in a different direction, right? So Cal Poly, we kind of knew that this was going to be they weren't going to be contenders for, in the Big Sky. That's just the reality of it. They had a pretty rough roster. They had a pretty rough team last year, and Bo Baldwin's got a lot of work for them. So I saw some stuff on the interwebs of saying, maybe Cal Poly shouldn't have played this year. To me, it's reps, right? That's anytime that you could get reps for your team, regardless of the result, it is a plus. And it is a good way for the coaches to truly evaluate the teams, their strengths and their weaknesses, more so than weaknesses.
Yeah, I think anyone who's saying Cal Poly shouldn't have played, well, guess what? I don't think anyone on Cal Poly thought they'd be true contenders right off the bat. They're changing the whole system, the whole offense. That is going to take a little bit of time. So why not play in the spring season where some people are already writing it off as an asterisk season, as a season that doesn't matter? Why wouldn't you get the extra 6 games, get all of these reps, try and figure out some kinks, try and find a true quarterback? I mean, they played 3 different quarterbacks this game. Try and find the pieces that are going to be in place to where you can be somewhat successful in the fall. Now, they have a lot to try and fix before the fall season, but live reps are more important than practice. And I'm glad we're seeing this from Cal Poly now, because in the fall, they're going to be better.
Well, especially when it comes to developing players, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the younger guys that are on the squad that are getting like live reps. I mean, this is only a win for them. So with that being said, I mean, I'm going to shift gears a little bit if you're good with it. I kind of want to hear your thoughts, because our next game, it's an extremely tough matchup against UC Davis. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so UC Davis, let me first just say UC Davis looks phenomenal this year. In all of the Big Sky Power Rankings, I have voted UC Davis above Eastern Washington every single week. UC Davis, I mean, maybe not the preseason, but since week 1. UC Davis looks phenomenal. They have a really talented team. I mean, it was exciting to us putting up almost 700 yards versus Cal Poly, but UC Davis put up almost 800. This is a team coached by a very good coach in Dan Hawkins. UC Davis is a very solid team across the board. I mean, if you look at, let's say, their total offense, I'm going to have to pull up some stats so we can go back and forth, but this is definitely, in my opinion, going to be the hardest game left on our schedule, because at least we get Idaho at home, even though they match up stylistically, it seems, with us the last couple times. UC Davis is a team we have to win. This is 100%, I've said this the last few weeks, it's playoff season for Eastern Washington, where we have to just win every game if we want hopes for a playoff game. Well, this is a legit playoff game with 2 playoff caliber teams. They're going to go at it. I mean, I like Eastern Washington in the matchup stylistically, but UC Davis is a team that can compete with anyone in the nation. I really do think that, especially this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, they kind of caught me off guard going into the season. I just wasn't prepared for them to be good as they were, or they are, I should say. That kind of caught me off guard. I mean, they only have 1 loss, right? And everybody else, they've been beating pretty handily. I mean, UC Davis has been playing some really good football.
Well, and their 1 loss is in a game where they kind of handled Weber for most of the games. Then, the last little bit of the game, Weber was able to hold them off. But I mean, Weber is what? A top 2 team in the nation?
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at it like that and you're like, oh, some people thought Weber would blow out UC Davis. UC Davis looked for a lot of the game like the better team. So, I mean, this is a very, very good team with a phenomenal offense. That is for one. They have a really good offense. They're the top 10 scoring offense in the league. I mean, in terms of total defense, they got to be up there too. Maybe not.
Number 1 in pass defense.
Number 1 in pass defense, which that's going to be tough. They're number 34 in total defense, which is pretty good considering you're a Big Sky team. Big Sky teams don't typically fare too well in total defense. I mean, if you're looking at total defense, UC Davis is above Weber. Maybe I'm wrong on that. It sounds wrong saying they're above Weber, but in total defense, it looks like they're above Weber. So, I mean, this is not going to be an easy game by any means. UC Davis, Hunter Rodriguez, he didn't look great in this last game because they played Idaho State very close, very competitive, which we just got done playing Idaho State, right before the bye week. Very close, very competitive, where we had to come back and win. UC Davis had to do the exact same thing. The last drive, they had to come back and win, drive it down the field, but they were able to score when they needed to. They were able to drive when they needed to. When their back was against the wall, they were able to do what a good team does, just like Eastern Washington versus Idaho State. You do what good teams do, and you're able to score at the very end. I think UC Davis is going to be a handful, man. I really do. But this is a game we have to win. What are the keys? Like, have you watched any of the UC Davis games? What stylistically do we have to do to beat UC Davis?
To me, it's just playing Eastern Washington football, right?
Yeah.
It's just that's the thing. It's like once they get going, they have to keep going, right? It's continue to put firm pressure on UC Davis, and don't go through any cold spills and whatnot. To me, it's just continuous firm pressure throughout the game.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think we really have to do is be aggressive on defense. The cool thing is Eastern Washington, some of our best seasons, defensively, we've never had a great, when you look at the statistics, total defense, that's just yards given up. We were able to give up quite a bit of yards even in 2018. We weren't a top 10 defensive team in terms of total yards, but where we were was scoring defense. Where we were was forcing turnovers. Where we were was actually capitalizing on big defensive plays, getting interceptions, running them to the house. Well, there's no surprise. Eastern Washington ranks basically 3 in the nation in defensive touchdowns. We're up there. We're aggressive. We're able to stop the ball. We're able to stop those big plays. But I think the key factor is we're going to have to catch the ball. We've had quite a bit of drops this season. This is not a team that we can have these easy drops against. You're going to have to capitalize, and you're going to have to play damn near perfect ball throughout the whole game to beat this team.
Yeah, I think like a game like against Cal Poly, right? When we are just getting yards left and right. Anything that was open that we wanted, we took advantage of. So I think having a game like this, having that momentum building will help us and push us in the right direction against the UC Davis.
Absolutely. So we only have a couple more things since we're, at about 13 minutes left for the hour. So let's go a little bit to the playoff hopes. Rusty. So let's do a little breakdown again, remind everyone how the playoffs operate this year, because it's not the same 24 teams. It is 16 team playoffs. And there's also another conference that has an at-large. Well, I guess not, because half of their conference canceled. So there is 6 at-larges. There was going to be 5. Now there is 6 at-larges. Arguably, the Missouri Valley is probably going to take 2 of the at-larges. That's kind of what everyone's saying on the interwebs, right?
Right.
The Missouri Valley is probably going to take 2 of the at-larges with either North Dakota, South Dakota State, North Dakota State. One of those is going to win the conference. The other 2 are probably going to grab the at-larges. Okay, what does Eastern Washington need to do to grab one of those at-larges? Because if Weber wins their side, which they're undefeated, they're expected to win. Their competition does not get harder. It gets easier as the season goes on. Weber, we're just expecting they're going to go 6-0 and win the Big Sky, I assume. Yeah. So what does Eastern Washington need to do to keep their playoff hopes alive?
The easy answer is win, right? Especially against UC Davis. This is a big game going against UC Davis. But to me, they need to win without a doubt. They just need to, stomp out the competition. And that's kind of, in my mind, the way to the playoffs for Eastern Washington.
Well, you're looking at the stats ranking. Eastern Washington, 12. UC Davis, 15. I really think, honestly, those should probably be switched. If I'm just being honest with you, I think UC Davis should be 12. Eastern Washington should be 15. UC Davis has the better loss on paper. Other than that, they beat the team we lost to. I think they should be above Eastern Washington. So we're probably, I haven't looked at the spread. We're probably not going to be the favorite. I would assume UC Davis is going to be a 3-point favorite just because it's at home at UC Davis, where I think if it's on neutral site, probably an even line, just to be honest with you. But one of these teams, their playoff chances are still 100% alive. Mm-hmm. But if anyone wants a playoff hope, you have to win out being on this side of the bracket, on this side of the Big Sky. So it's either we have to beat UC Davis, then, it's a rematch versus Idaho, and hopefully Idaho wins this week too, because it would be great if Eastern Washington was 4-1 and they're playing Idaho 4-1. Winner probably gets that second bid, but this is definitely a tough game. It's one of those things we have to win just to be on the bubble. But if we win this game and we win Idaho, I think we should be in the playoffs. I would say, I would bet 85% chance we would make the playoffs in that aspect.
Yeah, I think going into this game and then going again into the game against Idaho, we want Idaho to win this week, right? This only helps our stock if we're able to beat Idaho for kind of the second matchup of the season.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're rooting for the Tubs. We're rooting for the Vandals this week. We're rooting for Eastern Washington. But yeah, this is going to be a fun game versus a very talented team with a very well-coached team. Dan Hawkins is definitely turning this program around. And I've said this for the last few years, even before UC Davis was starting to be good in 2018. I said, UC Davis is a sleeping giant. They need someone to awake them. I mean, if you're looking at a recruiting pipeline area, huge, California. If you are looking at a program that has all the money in the world for the FCS, huge, UC Davis. Their endowment's $1.5 billion. They are not a big guy team in terms of their finances. They are a Pac-12 team in terms of their finances and a middle to upper tier Pac-12 team. They are a program that can turn it around with the right coach and the right administrative support, which is crazy because they already have a nice stadium. Before they were even selling out their 15,000 seat stadium, their administration said, once you guys sell out, you already have the funds in place. We will expand your stadium 30,000 seats. This is a sleeping giant. And Dan Hawkins is starting to awake that giant, and it's going to be tough, but I think Eastern Washington pulls it out. So, Rusty, let's hear it. What are your score predictions for this game? I'm just throwing it out to you. Good luck.
Score prediction. It's going to be a high-scoring game. I do have Eastern Washington win this game. I really do. I think their momentum has been building since week one. I feel like they're getting better every single week, and this is a huge game for Eastern Washington. And as far as score, I mean, dude, I think we're going to see two teams 50+.
50+, two teams?
I do.
That's impressive. Okay, so you're thinking like a 55-52 win.
Yeah, it's going to be in that range. Yeah, I wouldn't say any more than that.
Gosh, that'd be nerve-wracking, but those games are so fun to watch. I don't think it's going to be that much because I do think both defenses are underrated if they have everything playing the correct way. I think we're going to see a 34-31 or a 35-30 type of win. Eastern Washington, just because need to root for them. We want those playoff hopes alive. But yeah, Eastern Washington wins 35-30. I'm going for that 5-point win. And that's about it.
Let me change it to 44.
Yeah, exactly. Change it for me. But hey, guys, that's all we have for you. So Rusty, what are some closing remarks? And then I'll go check on my brisket.
Closing remarks. Hey, thanks for listening. You can find us on any of your streaming platforms. And if you don't only just want to listen to us, if for whatever weird reason you want to watch us talk, well, you could do that too on YouTube. And I'm still not sure what I think of people looking into my room, or not my room, my office. It's kind of strange, but if you want to watch and listen, you could do that now on YouTube. So with that being said, thanks again for listening to the Eagles Power Hour. We appreciate you, and go Eags.
Go Eags. Boom.